Welcome back to another episode of Christian Natural Health. Today, I'm very excited to have Mitch Matthews with us. Mitch is a success coach, speaker, and creator of the Top 1% podcast, Dream, Think, Do, where he helps high achieving leaders and entrepreneurs dream bigger, think better, and do more of what they were put on the planet to do. He's worked with organizations like Nike, NASA, and Disney, and he's the creator of the Authority Bridge, a proven process that helps professionals turn their experience into a coaching and speaking business they love. Welcome, Mitch. Thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, it's such an honor to be here. I love what you're doing, and I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah, so am I. So, as far as you'd mentioned off air a little bit that what
Yep.
you do is sort of a covert ministry. So, let's
Yeah.
bring it out into the open a little bit.
Let's do
Uh,
that.
so, as far as like how do you seek the Lord in terms of your process for creating marketing strategies and content and business
Yeah.
decisions? And how do you maybe either overtly or covertly encourage the people that you coach to do
Yeah.
well?
Oh boy. I love this. Boy, our conversation gets to be 4 hours, right?
Yeah.
So I love it. Well, I will tell you that for the longest time, I thought maybe I'd be a minister, maybe I'd be a pastor. But I just felt God pulling me into the marketplace. Early on, it was working at a little bike shop in my hometown in Iowa, all the way to then moving me into industries like business to business sales and pharmaceutical sales and all those kinds of things. And then when it came time for me to start my own business, and I had this vision for having a coaching and speaking and training business,
Mhm.
I thought at first, like the way I wanted to do it was to announce that I'm a Christian coach and all
Yeah,
these things. And I got a nudge from God that, like, don't be a Christian coach,
right.
be a coach that's a Christian.
Yeah,
And
interesting.
not that it's bad to be a Christian coach. I think
Right,
there are some people that are absolutely called to that and
right.
absolutely called to overt ministry and all of those things.
Yeah.
But as I prayed about it, I just got the nudge that God was calling me to work with leaders and entrepreneurs and founders
Hmm.
that he longed to connect with, but maybe hadn't felt comfortable walking through church doors in a long time.
Sure.
And he was like, just go be a curiosity in the marketplace.
Yeah.
Be a curiosity by bringing excellence, by bringing new ideas, by inspiring people.
Yeah.
Make it so that people are like, what's going on over there? What's happening?
Uh-huh.
And then as we engage, as we talk, then we can invite in great conversations about him once we're in a relationship. And it's
Sure.
not a bait and switch thing. It's
Right.
just kind of inviting them into what we're doing. The train's
Right.
moving.
Yeah.
If you're interested, get on board. And so
Right.
one of the ways that I do that, interestingly enough, is like I have that podcast, like you mentioned, Dream, Think,
Yeah.
Do. But what I'll do is we dive into topics that do help people to dream bigger, think better, and do more.
Yeah.
And what I'll do is I'll speak to neuroscience, I'll speak to psychology, but I'll also speak to where my faith has, what my faith has taught me. And I
Mhm.
always believe that, if God designed the brain,
Mhm.
wouldn't he also want us to know maybe some of the ways that it can work and how it
Sure.
works? And like,
Yeah.
recently I just walked through the neuroscience of Philippians 4,
Ooh,
on
I'm
the
intrigued.
podcast. Right. Like, because, I talked about like Paul obviously wasn't sitting there reading out of a medical textbook,
Right.
but if you dive into Philippians 4, neuroscience is wildly apparent. I mean, like science is finally in some ways catching
Right.
up to the ways that God did it, right?
Mhm.
So the way that, like, you asked me a great question of how does this work into the way I coach people and the way that I coach other coaches to coach people.
Sure.
And one of the things I always say is, if faith is a part of your journey and it's important to you, and it is for me, and prayer is wildly important for me, I
Mhm.
always say, let it be the thing that is your foundation,
Mhm.
and then educate people on that and invite them into it if they want to. So that's one of the things that I do is I talk about my faith openly, but I also almost every time say, you don't have to believe everything I believe. I mean, my wife and I don't believe everything the
Sure.
same way, all
Yeah.
that stuff. That's what makes it amazing, right?
Mhm.
So I tell my clients as we start to, move into an engagement of working together, whether it's over a quarter or over a year or sometimes multi-year
Mhm.
engagements, I'll say, hey, I pray before every coaching session.
Mhm.
If that's your jam, then I'll wait and pray with you. If that's not your brand of vodka, I'll
Yeah.
just do it before, right? Like it's no
And you don't have to
problem.
know
You're
about it.
not going to offend me at all.
Sure. Yeah.
And it's funny because 9 times out of 10, people will say, "No, I'll take some of that. Give me
Yeah.
2 scoops of that," right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's funny, like God just shows off all the time, and,
Yes.
that's the thing about signs and wonders is
Mhm.
sometimes they make you wonder, right? And so I recently was talking with one of my entrepreneurial clients,
Mhm.
and she's wildly successful, has had a really diverse background, and we were kind of talking and working through kind of a change, a time of
Mhm.
maybe switching kind of her tracks and businesses and all those things. And I had offered this, and she enjoyed prayer, even though it wasn't
Mhm.
necessarily a huge part of her life yet.
Right.
And one session I was praying, and just like you and I prayed before, like I pray for the person in their life and their relationships and their homes sometimes, and their businesses or whatever they do. And as I was praying for her home, and
Mhm.
she was married and has kids and all this stuff, as I was praying for her home, I got a nudge, just that nudge, say
Mhm.
homes. Don't say home, say homes. And
Uh-huh.
I didn't quite know, like, she's a client. We're connected, but I
Sure.
don't know every aspect of her
Right.
life. But I got the nudge and I corrected myself. I said, Lord bless her home. And then I got this nudge, say homes. So I was like, no, Lord bless her homes. And we were on Zoom,
Uh-huh.
and she, I don't always believe that you have to close your eyes for prayer.
Sure.
But I think she's kind of like, I think those are the rules. I have to close my eyes. So, she had her eyes closed.
Sure.
And when I said homes, her eyes just like she opened her eyes like she just
Ah,
seen a ghost. And so we get done, and she's like, "How did you know?"
word of
And I'm like,
knowledge.
"How did I know what?"
Yeah.
And she's like, "My husband, our attorney, and our realtor know, but they're the only people on the planet who know that we bought a vacation home last night."
Oh, how cool.
And she's like, "I sat up all night wondering, what does God think about this? Is
Oh,
God okay with us having a vacation home?" And I knew she had been very generous. She and her
right.
husband were amazing people. They gave back. They
Yeah.
did all sorts of things. And I said, "Well, I can tell you I did not know that, but as I
Yeah.
was praying, I got say homes." So
Yeah.
I think God's okay with it. Like if I'm
Sure.
getting that kind of nudge. And
Yeah.
she just started crying. She's like, "That's an answer to prayers." And I'm like,
Beautiful.
"That's beautiful. And that's how much God loves you, is that
Absolutely.
he's on board with this, and all that stuff." So
Right.
that's the thing about signs and wonders. They make you wonder.
That's
So that was a very long response to a short question, but
No,
hopefully that.
that's terrific. So there's lots of prayer and lots of just listening in the moment to the
Yeah.
Holy Spirit in terms of what we do for this particular person.
Yep.
But so encouraging people, let's say, because you've spoken to some of these huge companies, and
Right.
I can almost guarantee, I would assume anyway, that you're not going in there and being overt about the
Right.
panic
Right.
aspect in that context. So
Exactly.
how is this like you just memorize Proverbs and then you put this into
Yeah.
the protocol, or
That's
how does that work?
I love it. So what's interesting is that people that listen to the podcast
Yeah,
know they know about my faith, but they also know, and I talk about it. I'm like, when I go in and talk at a Fortune 100 company, oftentimes they have policies against talking about your faith in any way context.
right.
Although that's changing. There more and more organizations are allowing people to talk about their faith as long
Right.
as it's safe and all those kinds of things, which is great.
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
when they pay me a lot of money, they
Hmm.
also know that, hey, uh, you know, keep that kind of stuff out of it, all that stuff. So
Right.
what's funny is like I said, there's neuroscience in the Bible. There is wisdom
Absolutely.
in the Bible. So, it's funny, I've got a talk called Is Your Hair on Fire? It's all about worry and
Uh-huh.
anxiety. And
Sure.
it's all based on the Philippians 4
Yeah.
wisdom, right?
Mhm.
And it's so funny because like I gave this talk recently at a Fortune 100 company, and people came up to me afterwards and they're like, "Was that Philippians 4? Like, or were you
Wow.
like, were you?" And
That's
so,
cool.
sometimes I'll just speak to kind of the
Right.
flow of scripture. Sometimes I'll even put slides up, and it'll be a proverb or it'll be
Right.
a psalm. And
Yeah.
I'll just say, a 2,000-year-old Jewish proverb.
Yeah. Okay. And just
And,
leave.
and like, it's just that thing of like, oh, or, a
Sure.
proverb from the Middle East or whatever,
Yeah.
that kind of
Right.
thing.
Yeah.
And it's funny because God's wisdom is
Sure.
wisdom. It's
Right.
truth. And
Of
so
course.
most people, it's that whole thing of like, I'm like, God, you call us to plant seeds
Mhm.
and then somebody else can water them, all that stuff. So
Yeah.
that's some of the way that I do it. I also, if I'm ever up there, I will tell my story and I'll say, hey, this is what the science says, or this is what psychology says.
Mhm.
But my personal experience is this. And
Right.
so I'll mention that prayer is
Mhm.
how I do it. And I'll say,
Right.
but some people will say they meditate instead
Right.
of prayer. And I said,
Yeah.
my prayer, boy, it looks a little bit like meditation sometimes,
Sure.
those
Yeah.
kinds of things. So I'm just like, I think one of the things, one of my mentors in this subject once said something that set me free. He
Mhm.
said, don't worry about being right.
Mhm. Mhm.
He's like, I see so many people enter into something like this, and what they're worried about, what they're focused on is, will that person, the person I'm talking to, whether it's one individual sitting across from me at Starbucks or 1,000 people in an audience, will they think I'm right? He's
Mhm.
like, don't worry about that.
Right.
He's like, get them truth and
Mhm.
invite them into possible solutions,
Yeah.
but let God wrestle it out on
That
who's right.
I love
And
that.
I'm like, that just helped me so much to say, oh, all I have to do is go in, give them helpful information, love them well,
Yeah.
tell a little bit of my story, and then God will take it from there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that just takes so much pressure off. And
Right.
no matter what it is that we're called to do, I think that if
Yeah.
we take on the pressure of making it work, not only is that creating anxiety, but there's also a bit of a pride component to that too,
A hundred
right?
percent. A
So
hundred percent.
yeah, so that's a great way to look at it. So
Yeah.
for the believers that are listening and they
Yep.
feel like, I'm trying to check the boxes, I'm doing things decently, but I maybe don't feel like I'm doing everything that God placed me on this earth to do.
Yeah.
What advice would you have to someone who is just searching for that next step?
Yep.
Is there some advice you could give to
A
those?
hundred percent. So again, I always weave things through my own personal experience, which,
Yeah.
that's what we all do. But I know for me, like I was mentioning, when I was launching my coaching and speaking business, a big part of it was me thinking, I want to be a Christian coach. I want to make that big announcement. I want to prove to you, God, that I love you, that
Yeah.
I trust you. I'm gonna announce to the world. And he was very kind and I was like, kiddo, don't worry about it. Like I got this. No,
I love it.
I'm not dependent on you. I want
Sure.
to do this with you.
Right. Yes.
And I want to be in relationship, but like you don't have to prove it to me. He's
Yeah.
like, let's just keep talking.
Yeah.
And it was kind of it was yet another thing where he kind of de-escalated the pressure that I was putting on myself.
Exactly. Yeah.
That pressure to prove to him and to anybody else I'm a Christian and all this kinds of things, right?
Right.
And what I realized is like we follow a relational God.
Mhm.
He tells us what sin is. I truly believe he tells us what sin is,
Yeah.
not because he's a killjoy. He
Mhm.
just knows the pain that comes from sin, and he's like, kiddo, stay away from that. Like, he's not trying to keep us out of a good time. He's
Right.
trying to keep us away from pain. But I also think he is a relational God in that he has dropped strategy
Mhm.
and ideas on me. He's given us heads up on
Mhm.
shifts in our industry that's helped us to navigate really challenging times, all of those things. So I'm wildly grateful for it. But generally, I'm the one who's putting pressure on
Mhm.
things.
Yeah.
And so, for that person, I get to talk with a lot of different people, and it's funny because faith-based people often feel the pressure is, I want to perform for God. I want to
Mhm.
do it. I want to I
Yeah.
want to make my mark. I want to do
Right.
the thing that God put me on the planet to do. And what's interesting is, non-faith-based people feel a version of that same pressure.
Hmm.
They don't put it on God. They just
Right.
put it on, I want to do what I was put here to do,
Right.
whether they believe that that's a thing that God put them here to do, or whether
Right.
they just want to live their best life and all those things. So we all feel the pressure. It's
Sure.
just, kind of dependent on what you believe
Yeah.
about that. And one of the things is, I think it starts with knowing that God loves us
Hmm.
and wants to be in relationship with us, and he actually wants to talk to us about that. I think for
Yeah.
me that was a big thing. I always felt like God wanted me to figure it out, right? And then come to him and say, look what I did for you.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I love, Joshua, the story of Joshua, I just love so much because, you look at Joshua 1 as an example, here's somebody that, got to go into the promised land as a scout, and
Mhm.
he and Caleb came back out of the 12 scouts. He and Caleb were the two scouts who came back and said, God said it's ours.
Yeah.
Let's go get it.
Yeah.
And then 10 said, yeah, God said it's ours, but have you seen the giants that are over there? And
Yeah,
you've seen the
exactly.
walled cities that are over there?
Yeah.
So, the two came back and said yes. 10 came back
Right.
and said, no, that's not us, right? But
Mhm.
even in that story, Joshua was silent. It was Caleb who said, we can do it, all that stuff. It just said that Joshua was with Caleb. And
Right.
then Joshua, over the next 40 years, got trained up to lead, to be a military leader, to be a leader of people, right?
Right.
All those things. But then in Joshua 1, it says, okay, it's time to go in. And Joshua 1, it's the story of Joshua stepping fully into that role.
Yeah.
And in that one chapter, God has to say to Joshua, be bold and courageous.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
don't know about you, but when my kiddos are already bold and courageous, I don't tell them to be bold and courageous. I only remind them to be bold and courageous when they are not
Yeah.
feeling bold and courageous, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And what I love about that story is, so here's Joshua. He's been trained up. It's finally time. It's something, he has been, kind of participating in the preparation for, and
Mm-hmm.
he's still what I would guess scared,
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
right? And what I love about that is God didn't say to Joshua, be bold and courageous. I'll see you on the other side, kiddo.
Mm-hmm.
He
Yeah.
did not say, be bold and courageous because you're really talented now. You've been working real hard, like you're all set. See you on the other side.
Right.
God said three different ways, three different times, be bold and courageous because I'm with you wherever you go.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely.
And I don't know about you, but I need to be reminded of that all the time because there are times where I'm like, okay, I think this is where you're calling me to go, or I think this is what you're calling me to do.
Yeah.
I got this.
Sure.
Talk to you in a year, like, and God never meant for that. Like, and I always say, if I, it says, be bold and courageous, for I'll be with you wherever you go, wherever you walk.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
with you. So I always remind myself if I'm ever starting to freak out about something, I just reach down and touch my foot
Uh-huh.
because God reminds us wherever we step, he's right there with us.
He's there. Absolutely.
So I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, my foot's here, so that means God's here with me, like Holy Spirit, come with me, and he will guide, but he'll also bolster, right? Like as we're
Yeah.
talking with him. So I always say for that person that's like really wanting to figure out what's their purpose, what are they here for?
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty rare that God lays out the whole plan.
Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm.
But generally what I see over and over, and you can see this in the Bible so many times, God calls us to our next step.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the way that I relay that to my coaching clients,
Mm-hmm.
because I am a recovering perfectionist, and a lot of my people that I work with are high achievers who
Right.
are also,
Recovery.
either
Perfectionist
perfectionists
or
or in
perfectionist.
recovery from
Sure.
perfectionism, right?
Yeah.
Because they want to get it right. They
Mhm.
they don't want to mess around. They want to look like they got it figured out, and they actually want to have it figured out.
Yeah.
I always say, hey, God calls us into experiments.
Right. Mm-hmm.
He calls us to be scientists. I mean, you of all people understand what it means to be a scientist, right? A scientist walks into a lab and doesn't say, this is the way it's going to go. I'm going to prove it.
Mm-hmm.
A scientist walks into the lab and says, this is the way I think it's going to go,
Uh-huh.
which scientists would call a hypothesis, which if
Right.
you look in the dictionary at the definition of a hypothesis, it's a best guess.
Yeah.
It's a well-educated guess. And then the scientist puts the white lab coat on and starts to experiment. And
Mm-hmm.
then it's not about did it go exactly the way you thought? It's
Yeah.
how did
What
it
happened?
go
Yeah.
and what can we learn from it?
Right.
And I always say, like, God might call us into something
Mm-hmm.
and we might think, oh, I know how this is going to go. And God knows it's not going to go the way you thought, but you're still going
Right.
to learn a bunch. And it might
Sure.
take you to a place you didn't know about. But that's where I was trying to get you to.
Yeah.
Or it's that thing of going, hey, I'm going to meet you in that place. The
Mhm.
other thing is, and I think this is also important for recovering perfectionists, is I know there are times where I have fully walked into something that God did not call me to. I
Yeah.
thought he did,
Hmm.
but like God didn't call me to it. But like he didn't abandon me. He's like, kiddo, you're adorable. I love the way you just run at stuff sometimes. I didn't call you to that, but
Sure.
I'm gonna meet you in it. Your feet there? Yeah, your feet
Right.
are there. That means I'm with you.
Yeah.
Now I'm gonna help you navigate this. And sometimes
Right.
it's getting out of stuff. Sometimes it's he still can pull off miracles in the
Right.
midst of my mistakes,
Yep.
all of those things. And of course, he wants to guide us to have our best life, but
Hmm.
we're not just always going to get it right. So I always say if somebody's really wrestling with their purpose, I always say, hey, that's great. You have that as a priority. You want to figure out why you're here.
Yeah.
But generally, we don't figure out why we're here in a vacuum. We
Right.
generally figure out why we're here by experimenting.
As we're
So
moving.
get to start experimenting.
Sure, yeah. And I love the fact that you're emphasizing the relationship too, because I think that if you're going to hear the Holy Spirit talk to you, you have to first be in a relationship in order to
Right.
do that. And
Yeah.
then he'll tell you what's next,
And
but
he wants to,
anyone,
right? Absolutely. He wants to talk with you about it. It's not like he's not waiting for us to pick a lock,
yeah, yeah,
going, how are you going to
right.
talk to me?
Sure.
It's that, of course we want to honor him, but
Mhm,
even Paul in Philippians says, hey, start with gratitude,
mhm,
right?
mhm.
Start
Yeah,
with joy.
right.
And what's wild about that, you so understand all of this from the standpoint of how anxiety kind of racks the body in so
Yeah,
many different ways. And
right.
Paul's like, hey, don't worry about anything. But
Hmm.
it's not that, kind of that song from the 80s or 90s, don't worry, be happy.
Yeah,
Paul's
right,
like, hey, he's not saying that because
right.
most people that don't worry do
Uh-huh.
the dismissive hand wave. Like you
Sure.
tell somebody you're worried about something, you're tempted to worry about something, they'll
Yeah,
usually like, oh, don't worry, which
yeah.
has never helped anyone in
No,
the history of mankind, right?
exactly, right.
And that's not what Paul's doing. So
Right.
when I first read it, I'm like, Paul,
Uh-huh.
don't do the
Don't
hand
do the
wave.
hand
And he's
wave.
he's not. He's not. He says, "Hey,
Yeah.
don't worry about anything. Instead, pray."
Hmm.
Right? So he's
Right.
saying "Hey, like worry doesn't get us anywhere. It won't add anything to us. Like Jesus even said, it won't add to what you're doing. It
Mhm.
won't add a day to your life."
Yeah,
But he said, "Don't worry about anything. Take it to God. God wants to talk to you about all of it."
yeah.
And then what's beautiful is in like if we hand that thing that we're worried about to God,
Mhm.
even Paul speaks to the neuroscience of that when we take that thing and scoop it out of our heart and we give it to God saying, man, I'm really tempted to freak out about this thing,
Yeah,
there's a little place in our heart where we scoop that out, we gave that thing, and
yeah.
and Paul says right away, now
Mhm.
fill that hole in
Mhm.
with stuff you're grateful for,
Yeah,
things that are righteous, things that are beautiful, things that you're excited about. Like it
yeah.
just talks about that right there in Philippians 4. And neuroscience tells us like we can't force ourselves to forget about something. We
Right.
have to
Exactly.
replace it.
Yep.
Right. So I love like I obviously get excited about this stuff, but like I love that Paul, again, wasn't reading from a medical textbook,
Right.
but he was talking with the one who designed the brain. So it just makes sense he knew.
God's wisdom, absolutely.
Right.
Sure. So, and for somebody who feels like, okay, I know the thing that I'm called to do, kind of a thing.
Right.
It seems like nothing is moving forward as fast as I would like.
Yep.
Somebody who just feels like they're stuck and they're crawling along and they look at all these
Yep.
other people, maybe on social media, maybe people
Oh,
they know,
right.
whatever, that seem to be succeeding. What would you say to somebody who feels like they're in that place?
Oh, yeah. Like, I don't know about you, but I'm like, oh, weekly, I'm
Uh-huh.
tempted to walk right in that. And I
Sure.
think, you look at the way that our brains have evolved and the ways that social sciences and all of those things,
Yeah.
comparison has always been a
Sure.
thing since the dawn of time. I mean, how many different biblical stories are rooted in comparison, right?
Right.
So we know that comparison's always been a thing, but I think we can also say there's never been a generation that's dealt with comparison in the same way that our generation does because of social media and all
Yeah.
of those things. So to say it's always been an issue, yes,
Yeah.
but it's an amplified issue for our generation more than any
Yeah.
generation in the past. So one of the things that because I work with wildly successful people. On my coaching side, I'm kind of expensive. So
Yeah.
I generally only get to work with that, like the most
Sure.
successful people.
Right.
And what's interesting, and I think, people that are just starting out, or, people that maybe don't have a lot of money or a lot of notable success, would
Right.
assume that once you get to a certain mark, like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I won't feel this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the irony is that wherever you're at, you're going to be tempted by this. I'll tell you a quick story.
Really?
Somebody that just they had a goal. I was sitting and talking with them. Somebody who had a goal of having a $10 million business.
Mm-hmm.
That's his dream. And actually he's going to hit it this year.
Mm-hmm.
Like and blow that out of the water. $10 million.
Yeah.
Didn't grow up with money. $10 million. Like if somebody would have said, you are someday going to have a business that produces 10 million plus dollars in revenue, he
Uh,
would have laughed at you as a kid. And
yeah.
then for the last 10 years, that's what he's been working on,
Right.
day and night. And so he's like, I'm almost there, I'm almost there.
Yeah.
In the same year,
Uh-huh.
one of his friends just sold a business for 1.5 billion dollars.
Oh, and now he's comparing.
Right.
Oh,
So like I'm like he's
yeah.
almost there. There's what he thought was the finish line. He can
Sure.
see the finish line. He has been sprinting towards it. He's like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get it. And
Yeah.
his friend zips by,
Oh,
right? And
man. Yeah.
now $10 million, he was at least tempted to
Right.
say, oh, the $10 million is so small now. Right. Like, I mean, when you compare it to
Yeah.
$1.5 billion,
Right.
but it's all relative. So one of the things
It
that I will say to somebody that feels behind,
is.
I will often start with, and not in a dismissive way, tone matters here, but
Yes.
I'll say behind whom?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Good point.
Who are you behind?
Right.
And it's funny because sometimes they'll like this person, this entrepreneur had a
Yeah.
very specific person to point to saying behind them. It's
Yeah.
like, well, what's interesting, before you heard that story, how did you feel about your $10 million goal? And he's like, well, I kind of thought this was it. Like I was hitting it. And I said, at the same time, you probably knew deep down
Mm-hmm.
that once you hit that,
You're gonna
you're
have a
going
new
to need
goal,
to come up with a new goal,
right?
right?
Yeah.
Like that was a mile marker. And so that's one of the things I encourage people to do is say, hey, my goals are mile markers. They're
Mm-hmm.
not destinations,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
right? Because anytime you hit a goal,
Right.
again, then
Yeah.
oftentimes you're set with a new goal.
Sure.
And I think sometimes that sneaks up on people.
Yeah.
But I always say, like, who you compare yourself to. And actually, with that entrepreneur, I
Mm-hmm.
said, talk to me about your friend. Like, have you gotten to talk with him? He goes, yeah. I
Mm-hmm.
said, tell me about some of the things he's excited about. And he's like, well, he hit this incredible goal he didn't think he was going to hit. And I said,
Yeah.
talk to me a little bit about what $1.5 billion problems are.
Oh, that's a good point.
And it was very interesting. He's like,
Ah.
huh. He goes, well, actually, I was talking with my friend about how he is now moving his family to a compound,
Uh-huh.
how he's having to invest in security
Wow.
because this
Yeah.
buyout of his business was very public. So
Sure.
now many people
Mm-hmm.
now know that he has $1.5 billion. Now he'll get a part of it. He'll get a big
Obviously,
share of it, but he
yeah.
won't get all of it. But
Sure.
like I said, so I'm not saying that getting $1 billion is a bad thing, but I
Right.
said, what are, we define what are some of the problems with getting $1 billion? And he was like, this guy is now worried about the school that his kids are going to. And does that school now have the security at a level that, and this $10 million person,
Yeah.
he's not like, obviously he's excited, good things are happening, but he's not
Yeah.
worried about the level of security and daily concern for,
Sure.
kidnapping
Yeah.
issues with his kids.
Yep.
And I said, so do you really want $1 billion problems yet?
Right. That's a, yeah, fantastic point. Like, look at the entire package. Don't just check
Right.
out the social media highlight reels, which is
Exactly
all you're
right.
going to see.
Exactly right. And I said, here's the thing is you never know. Like, some of the problems. I said, every level of success brings a set of problems. And I don't think that God is like, bring on the new problems, like get
Right.
them.
Of
But
course.
I like, God knows we are in a world
Yeah.
and that is not, heaven
Right.
yet,
Yeah.
right?
Totally.
And so, like, I do believe that God knew that because it's not perfect yet, because we're not in heaven yet,
Hmm.
we're gonna need him. every step of the way. So it's to
Yeah.
say, hey, what are some of those things I feel called to next? What are some of those things? And also know, and this is one thing because you specifically brought up what if
Mhm.
somebody feels behind.
Yeah.
So something that helps me
Yeah.
and the people that I talk with about this is a specific thing, especially if prayer is important to them,
Hmm.
is whenever you feel tempted to compare yourself and feel behind someone specifically,
Right.
immediately pray for that person.
That's great. That's such a good, yeah, expand on that, please. But that's
Right.
fantastic. I love
So
that.
I'll give you an
Yeah.
example. So I have another
Yeah.
what's funny is I have another coaching client
Yeah.
that I won't say any specifics because I never want to,
Sure.
you
Of
know,
course. Yeah.
mess with any confidentiality. But let's
Sure.
just say this client, very, very successful,
Hmm.
had a dream of taking their family to Europe for a month.
Hmm.
And they did that
Yeah.
last summer.
Uh-huh.
And full trip. And boy, if you followed him on Instagram, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Sure.
a beautiful, glamorous at every turn,
Mm.
amazing restaurants, beautiful destinations, incredible hotels, like it just mind-blowing experiences, right?
Hmm.
At the same time, this client expressed to me on his way home, again, lifelong dream of taking his family for a month-long trip to Europe.
Yeah.
On his way home, they had to change their tickets on their return flight, because they couldn't stand each other, and they needed to take that, like they sat in different parts of the plane, so they
Oh,
didn't have to be next to each other on their
oh,
way home. Yeah.
how
And
sad.
what's wild is, especially with the podcast, and with your
Yeah.
podcast, you get to have amazing conversations with people who have had incredible experiences. But with Dream Think Do, I will often speak to people as they've just had incredible experiences, or as they're hitting the New York Times bestseller list, or
Yeah.
as they won an Academy Award, and
Right.
what's interesting is they won't always talk about it when the mic is on, but
Hmm.
often they will talk about before or after the
Yeah.
conversation of some major thing that's happening in their life
Yeah.
that very few people know about, that is also a huge challenge, or a problem, or a dramatic fear. As I always say, it does something good in my heart that if I'm tempted to to be jealous of
Yeah.
someone, I'll just say it just
Right.
straight up.
It
If
is.
I'm
Yeah.
tempted to feel behind, or just straight
Sure.
up jealous
Yeah.
of someone, when I lean into prayer, because I know we're, again, this side of heaven, nobody's got it
No
perfect. No matter
problem.
how good it looks in the,
Yeah.
the sizzle reel,
Yeah.
nobody's got it perfect. When I pray for them,
Yeah.
because I know that, yes, they may just had an incredible vacation on a beach or a mountaintop or whatever.
Yeah.
I also know they probably have a family member who's sick, or
Yeah.
their business might be on the brink, or they might have just gotten some really bad news. So
Yeah.
to pray for them, because I
Hmm.
know we all got problems, right? So pray for them. But
Yeah.
what's interesting about that too is that I think comparison, it's one of the most powerful tools in the enemy's toolbox,
100%. Yep.
right? And I believe there is a God who loves us, and I also believe there's an enemy of God who hates us
Hmm.
and is a total schmo, but he's really good at what he does, right?
Right. Fair.
But his tools are kind of predictable.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that comparison, at least for me,
Hmm.
comparison is the big crescent wrench.
Sure.
Like, he really tries to come after me
Beats
with
that one.
with
Yes.
comparison, right? And what's interesting is that when I'm tempted to
Hmm.
move into comparison,
Hmm.
feel behind,
Hmm.
feel jealous, if
Hmm.
I lean into prayer even for 30 seconds, Lord, bless that person. And
Hmm.
I'll say, Lord, I'm tempted to really be jealous, or I'm really
Right.
tempted to feel behind. But Lord, I pray for that person. I don't know what's going on in their life. They might be a friend, they might be a total stranger that, somebody I see on Instagram.
Yeah.
But Lord, you know what's going on in their world.
Hmm.
I ask, Lord, that you bless their family. I ask that you bless their business. I ask that you bless their calling. I ask that you draw them closer to you.
Yep.
What's interesting with that big old crescent wrench
Mhm.
of a tool that the enemy can use,
Yeah.
it gets smaller and smaller, and it gets put back in the box. Because
Right.
the more I lean in to pray for the people I feel compared, like that I'm tempted to compare myself to,
Right. Yeah.
the less I feel tempted to compare myself. because I know the enemy's like, oh, wait, he figured out the comparison thing. It
Sure.
doesn't like
Yeah.
it's
How
not
we do this.
working. In fact,
Right.
now God's blessing those other people too. Like, oh my gosh. So I
Sure.
just find that if I can see some of those tools in the toolbox and I see him coming with them, I
Hmm.
just learn like, hey, if I can hand that over to Papa and if
Yeah.
I can pray and all
Right.
that, it diminishes the weight, the power, and all of that. And
Yeah.
I might still be a little tempted to feel
Yeah.
behind, but then
Right.
then I can follow up with that prayer to say, Lord,
Right.
is there anything I can be doing today that
Hmm.
I'm not currently doing?
Hmm. Absolutely.
Guide me in that.
Yeah. And I love the fact that as you're describing praying that God blesses somebody else, it gets you into empathy and compassion, which is the
Right.
opposite of what
100%.
all the jealousy is all about me and what I want for myself. And now you're
Yep.
putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. It's perfect. That's
Yeah.
exactly the great antidote. I love it.
And I'm not perfect at it. I will say,
Oh, of
right? Like
course,
there are
nobody is.
days where I can do it in
Sure.
3 seconds, and then there are
Right.
days where it might be more like 3 hours, and I'll,
Right.
I'll like brood or freak out for a little bit.
Yeah.
But what I work on currently is
Mhm.
how quickly can I get to that right
To that
thinking?
place.
How
Yeah.
quickly can I get to the invitation that Jesus has
Right.
for us all the time?
Right.
And I'm not perfect at it. Sometimes it's days, but I'm getting better and better. So
Right.
most of the time it's minutes, but
Mhm.
sometimes it's still days.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
Right.
but it's that invitation that Holy Spirit, Jesus, God asks us into. He's like, yeah, want to talk to you about all of it.
Uh-huh, absolutely. Well, and that kind of brings me to a new idea in terms of the empathy of what it must be like to be in a high achiever's shoes, somebody that's
Right.
really at the top of their game. I would imagine, and it seems like I've heard enough stories like this to
Yeah.
confirm that, the Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where at the very
Yep.
top it's like self-actualization, and I don't believe he ever talked about God, but the idea of
Yep.
relationship with the Lord. I would imagine when you get to the very top, you start to feel really empty. What's this all for? And like, do those questions ever come up with some of your big clients? Or
100%.
okay,
100%.
can
And
you?
what's interesting about that, and what's interesting too about high achievers
Yeah,
and kind of that
yeah,
higher levels of actualization is
yeah,
one, people say, gosh, I think faith, religion's just a crutch. And it's like, yep, I need it.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah.
So
True.
it's like what's interesting
Yeah.
is as people have higher levels of success.
Yeah.
What's interesting is, and this is less true for people with faith, but
Mm.
it's still true. It still happens
Yeah.
with them. And one of the things that happens that I think is probably one of the best, again, strategies in the enemy's toolbox, and I never want to give him too much credit,
Sure.
but
Yeah.
it is one of the best tools for higher achievers,
Hmm.
um, is isolation.
Hmm. Hmm.
Because when someone hits a pinnacle or they have a higher level of success or whatever the mark might be, whether it's a particular, a number in your bank account or
Right.
a particular neighborhood or a particular title, all
Yeah.
of those things. What's interesting is no level of success makes you immune to worry about what's next,
Sure. Yep.
to worry about, or at least be tempted to worry about purpose,
Right.
right? To worry about others, all those things. But what's interesting, and again, I think one of the biggest tools in the toolbox, especially for high achievers, is the higher you go, the
Mhm.
fewer people you feel like you can talk to.
Interesting. Why is that?
Because I think a lot of people, as they move up that chain,
Hmm.
and I get to work with CEOs, I get to work with
Yeah.
people that, have put in the hard work, they've done the reps, they've achieved, and some of those people have gotten there through nepotism and through what
Sure.
some might call good luck, but
Right.
most people they put in some hard work.
Right. Sure.
But when you hit that higher level,
Hmm.
what winds up happening, and I just actually had a conversation with a CEO this week about this,
Hmm.
is he was wrestling with something. And one, he knew he couldn't take it to his team
Hmm.
because he did not want to make his team worry about their organization, all of
Yeah.
those things. But really the underlying thing for this particular CEO was, who am I to complain?
I can see that. Yeah.
Right? Like there are a lot of people that, live in gated communities, have beautiful cars,
Mhm.
their kids are in the best schools,
Right.
and they're going to complain about their life.
Sure. Yeah. First world problems.
Right? A
So,
hundred
yeah.
percent, right?
Yeah.
And we joke about that,
Yeah.
but there's still problems,
Sure. Of course. Yeah. There's
right?
always going to be. Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is that I just saw some neuroscience on this, some research. It's really fascinating in how our amygdala, which you're very familiar with, but it's what I call our brain's bodyguard. It's the part of our brain that is constantly scanning
Mhm.
for any danger,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
What's interesting about the amygdala is the amygdala identifies the unknown as danger.
Hmm.
So anything we're not sure of,
Yeah.
the amygdala identifies that as danger.
Hmm.
And what's interesting about those higher level people, I mean, it's true of all of us, but those higher level people, they tend to be higher on the mountain so they can see further.
Right.
And what that often means is they also see even more
Potential
of the
problem.
potential challenges. That's
Yeah.
part of their day job, right? Is to vision and say, hey,
Right.
how do we navigate some of the things that are coming in our industry or in the world or with our customers and clients and all those things? That's a part of their day job. So you can imagine their amygdala is hyper tuned
Uh-huh.
to see the like to look into the future.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that oftentimes looking into the future, I have a friend, he wrote The Shack.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah, William Paul Young.
Mhm.
Paul always talks about that if you are worried about the future,
Hmm.
you are what he calls future tripping. And
Interesting.
and what's interesting is that God is in the future. God is in
Right.
our future and God
Right.
is in our past.
Right.
But the only place that we can connect with God is right now, in
Now.
this moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so these high level achievers, these, high level position folks,
Hmm.
highly successful people, a lot of times they're a big part of their day job is being in the future, looking out, being a visionary, all
Yeah.
of those things. And
Yeah.
they're spending a lot of their time in the future. And that's again, it's needed.
Hmm.
It's a part of their job description.
Right. Yeah.
But at the same time, whether you're a faith-based person or not, the more time you spend in the future,
Hmm.
you're tempted to try to stay there, which is not where we can connect with God. And
Right.
it's not our current reality, right? So,
Exactly.
one of the things I talk about with my high level leaders is to
Yeah.
say, hey, have some vision time.
Right.
Absolutely. Let's spend some marked time on your calendar
Right.
visioning.
Yeah.
But then let's always come back to the right here and now.
Hmm.
Because whether they're a faith-based person or not, you might some folks might call it, I'm fully present. And
Sure.
that's true.
Yeah.
Like God designed us this way to be in the moment, right?
Right. Right.
It's even better if we know that we're in the moment with the creator of the universe,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
But even if somebody isn't aware of that yet, just getting them back to being fully present is a powerful experience.
Oh,
But if
sure.
they can get back to the full, be fully present,
Yeah.
also know that the God who created evergreen trees and designed the sun and designed tigers. I
Yeah.
mean, come on. How funny and how generous and how crazy cool is God to
Yeah.
design a big old cat with
Uh-huh.
stripes, like orange and stripes.
That
Like,
is a good point. Yes.
how awesome is that? Or like you look at the eyeball.
Uh-huh.
It's like it's crazy. The eyeball is
Oh,
amazing.
yeah.
And the one who designed the eyeball
Uh-huh.
also knows how many hairs are on your head.
Yeah. I love
That's
it.
mind blowing. Like, I'm so glad it says in Isaiah 55 that your ways are not our ways, your thoughts are above our thoughts. Like, yeah, because if my brain can get around you fully, you're not God. So
Exactly.
I'm so glad there are huge parts of, God that I cannot even comprehend. But
Yes.
to know that God is willing and able to meet us in this moment, He wants us, vision. Talk to us about our future. Talk
Sure.
about the future of our company or the future of our country. Like, He wants to talk with us about those,
Sure.
but He always wants us to come back right to this moment, touch our feet, remember
Uh,
He's with us wherever our feet
right
go,
here.
right? But right here, right now.
Yeah. So
So for those high level leaders, that's an added important thing.
yes. So one thought as you were talking, there's a book I just finished reading that is called A Million Little Miracles. I believe it's by Mark Batterson. Have you read this?
Yeah, I have
So
not, but I love
yeah.
Mark, and
So
yes,
yeah,
I've heard it's so good.
it is so good. And it's exactly along the lines of what you were describing with the tiger. And he just takes all these scientific, amazing little factoids, and
Yep.
geeks out over them like a kid.
Right. I
It's
mean,
so
it's
great.
it's
Yeah.
crazy. It's
Yeah.
crazy. I
Right.
love science. I was solidly a C to C minus science student in high school. Like, but
Right.
I have fallen in love with science and
Sure.
neuroscience and psychology just
Yeah.
because you're like, God, you're so
Mhm.
amazing. Like you think
Yeah.
about the axis that our planet
Right.
is on. Is it the
Right.
absolute perfect axis to
Yeah.
then interact with the sun? And we are at an exact
Sure.
speed
I know.
where like we can spin and
Right.
everything stays put. But if it was a little faster or a little slower,
Mhm.
everything would just be flying around. Like
Exactly.
that's insane. It's
Right.
so cool. And to go
Yeah.
that God actually knows and cares about us. That our like he is above. He knows our future. He knows the pain that we're in. You
Yeah.
know, there's a good chance it will subside. There's a good chance the pain we're in or the problems that we're having
Mhm.
will he will redeem them to help us know something or to be
Yeah.
something or to understand something. But
Mhm.
at the same time, his heart hurts when our heart hurts.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
that's crazy. It's
Right.
amazing.
That perspective, absolutely. So to sort of bring it full circle,
Yeah.
the idea of, if you're at the top or if you're at the very beginning, it
Yeah.
seems like the ultimate answer is to just keep your eyes on him. Like
Yep.
if you have that focus, I remember not that long ago, there was a couple of moments where I was really tempted to freak out about something. And every time
Yeah.
I would talk to God, I would hear, I'd picture him next to me.
Love it.
And he would just say, nope, don't look at that. Look at me. Nope,
Yep.
look at me.
Come back
Nope.
here.
Yep, come back here, right
Come here,
here.
kiddo.
In
Come
this
here, kiddo.
moment,
Yeah.
exactly. And that is where peace is. And that's also where he'll tell you what the next step is, but
Yep.
not so that you can run out ahead of him and then fill in all the extra steps on your own as if you
Right.
don't need him, because it starts with relationship. And if we
Yep.
don't start there, then nothing else is going to fall into place.
Yep.
But if we do, then it's an adventure.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's it.
Exactly. And he wants to meet us right where we're at and no matter what level of faith we have. Like I love the story in Mark
Mhm.
where the dad brings his kiddo to Jesus. And the kid probably had epilepsy. He was having seizures, throwing himself into a fire. Like I can't even fathom how
Mhm.
horrible that would be.
Right.
Like like
Mhm.
you
Sure.
don't. And it says he's tried everything. He's done
Right.
everything he could do for the kid. And he brings him to Jesus and says, "Jesus, will you heal my kid?" And Jesus straight up asks him, like, "Do you believe I can?" Which
Mhm.
is a really interesting thing, right?
Mhm.
And I love the response that this father has because I think it's one of the most honest and raw responses in the whole Bible. He says, I believe that you can and help me with my unbelief.
Mhm. Yeah.
And what I love about it is Jesus doesn't say, well, wait, are you at 99% belief? Like I can work with that.
Right.
He
Yeah.
doesn't say, like, wait, are you down at 1% belief? God,
Sure.
and Jesus was like, okay, I can work with that. And he heals
Yeah.
the kid.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I love that. I have to remind myself because that is, on my worst days, not
Mhm.
on my best days, but on my worst days, I am really tempted to
Mhm.
think that God says, kiddo, when you have it all figured out, bring it to me. I'll stamp
Me.
my approval on it.
Yeah. Right.
And God's like, no,
Mhm.
like he wants to show us stuff. He also wants us to function in peace and in his love and all of that. Cause, there are going to be bad days. I remember one particular day where something happened in our business, no mistake of my own, but somebody made a mistake. We lost $50,000 in a day. That
Ouch.
hurt. Like, and it was a time where, $50,000 is a lot of money, but like at
Otherwise,
that time, $50,000 was a
no.
lot of money.
Yeah.
And I was mad. Like I came like straight up to God, came back to my office and I was mad. Like, hey, we have a relationship. Like,
Yeah.
hey, you've given me heads up before. Like, what's the deal? Where was the sign? Like, what are you gonna do now? And I think I realized in that moment, like, oh, we're in a relationship where I can still be angry with God. And what's beautiful about that is he's like, oh, oh, wait, kiddo.
Uh-huh.
Like he's not afraid of us being he made me fiery,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? He's not shocked by it,
Right.
like, oh, look, Mitch
Sure.
is upset. That's new. Like he knows, right?
Sure.
But
Yeah.
he was kind of like the lifeguard where the person who's like flailing and flailing and flailing. Sometimes the lifeguard, if you've ever been a lifeguard, I was never a good enough swimmer to be a lifeguard, but a lot of my friends were. They
Uh-huh.
would wait until the person's exhausted a little bit so they don't get whacked or punched
Sure.
or whatever, right? Like let a little of the fight out,
Yeah.
right? Because then the lifeguard can come and say, I got you, and swim you to the side, right? And God did that today, that day.
Yeah.
He was like, kid, you swing it out. You
Yeah.
you let me have it. Absolutely let me have it.
Yeah.
And then once I got through that a little bit, and I mean, I was a tub of goo on the floor. Like I was mad, I was sad, I was scared, and all those things, right? Like blubber and crying, like all that stuff. And I'm not afraid to admit that.
Yeah.
Then God's like, okay, are you done with that part? And he wasn't mad at me. He was just
Right.
like,
Yeah.
are we done with that portion of
Sure.
our
Yeah.
getting upset? And I'm like, yeah. And it wasn't condescending at all. He's
Mhm.
like, I get it. Let's talk about what's next.
Mhm.
And kind of that, I got you. I'm
Mhm.
with you. I'm never going to abandon you. And
Right.
what's amazing is, and you've probably had experiences like this too, like that was a hard day,
Yeah.
but I learned stuff that day
That you couldn't
that
have
I call them
away.
slingshot moments, right? Like the slingshot, if you remember how slingshots, like you draw back and it seems like it's a setback and then shoom, like
Yeah.
that day was the beginning of a new season of our business. I didn't know it at the time. It
Right.
was not immediate,
Right.
but within months, that had set us up for a next season of success that I couldn't expect or anticipate. And honestly, I don't know that we would have found it had
Right.
we not had that setback, because that also, with God meeting us in it,
Mhm.
um, helped me to realize some things that needed to be fixed.
Mhm.
And we weren't going to be able to get to that next level until we fixed some of
Well,
that
you
stuff.
saw it.
Yep.
Yeah. He
Yep.
works
So,
all things together for the good of those
yep.
that love God and are called according.
100% doesn't cause them, but can redeem the shizness out of them. Right.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I love it. So, and
Yeah.
side note, as you were describing that, I was picturing Elijah on, as he fled Jezebel and she
Right.
finds him. And then there's like this the fire, and then there's the storm, and then there's the earthquake.
Yeah.
But God is not in any of those things. And he asks him a couple of questions, and Elijah keeps giving the wrong answer. And then there's the real still small voice, and God's like,
Yeah.
all right. Are
Kiddo.
we done?
Kiddo.
Tantrum. Right.
Yeah. Talk about, and what I love about that story
Yeah.
is what's interesting is that God never asked him to have the showdown on Mount Carmel.
Right. Yeah, yeah.
If you look at it, like
That's
God
true.
never said, "Hey, go have a fight, go pick a fight with a bear,"
Yeah.
right? But him knowing like how he was wired, but also him knowing God,
Right.
he went and picked a fight, and
Yeah.
God met him in that, right, and showed off. And what I also love about that story is I'm guessing that's not the first time God lit something on fire, because like he was confident, like
Yeah. He
three
knew.
times pour 3 jars of water on that
Right.
bull,
Yeah.
like let's make sure that wood's really wet.
Yeah.
Like that was not the first time. So I always wonder, those are the stories where I cannot wait to get to heaven and just go, come here,
Get the
come here, come here, come
backstory.
here. Tell
Mhm.
me, tell me the backstory. Like,
Yeah.
were you on a field somewhere when you were 18
Yeah.
and you just were like, God, it'd be real cool if you could do this, Like, when was the first time God showed you he could
Right.
do that? Because I just have this feeling that what, like, Mount Carmel probably wasn't the first time. So, like, did he just amaze his friends? Did that like take somebody else out? Like, what
Right.
was that? So I can't
Yeah.
wait to get to heaven to hear some of the backstories of like,
Yeah.
or like another one is I have a feeling that when Mary said to the servants at the wedding, "Do whatever he
Right.
tells you to do,"
Yeah.
like did Jesus do that at their table? Like I know I grew up
Party
with
trick.
I loved Mountain Dew as a kid, and I always imagined like I didn't want wine, but I wanted Mountain Dew. And there
Sure.
were times where I'm like, did Jesus take water and make some Mountain
Like
Dew as a
play with
kid?
it.
And Mary'd be like, Jesus, I told you we're drinking water tonight. Like I just wonder, because that couldn't have been. She had so much confidence. That wasn't the
Yeah.
first time he
Right.
turned water into wine.
You just knew.
But like what are some of the backstories? So
Right.
yeah.
Oh,
So
that's a
anyway,
great.
that's my I have a weird brain that way, but I'm
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I cannot wait to ask some people some questions up in heaven. Like, okay, what
Yeah.
was it like? Like when
Like, oh,
when
not.
was the first time? Was it
Yeah.
with milk? Did he just like, Mom, I want milk? Nope, we're having water. Boop. Like, hey, Jesus, I said we're having water. Like, you know what I mean? So
That's
anyway.
hilarious. So,
Oh
what
shoot.
have I not asked you that you want to make sure you leave with our audience?
Yeah, I love it. Boy, this has been such a great conversation. So much fun. One thing is that God's not waiting for you to be perfect.
Yeah. Amen.
God's not waiting for you to be perfect. And I said, you know, I'm a recovering perfectionist. And what's interesting about perfectionism, I think it's also one of the other big tools in the enemy's toolbox that we don't talk about enough. There's a lot of people that are dealing with perfectionism, but they don't realize they are. Because a lot of people assume that if you're a perfectionist, then your desk is perfectly organized, that your kitchen counters could be an L decor immediately, like everything's in its
Right.
place.
Yeah.
But actually, perfectionists, as an example, are pile people. So, like, if a perfectionist comes back from a meeting
Mhm.
with a piece of paper or a participant guide or a handout or an agenda, what
Yeah.
they will often do is they will put it on the corner of their desk,
Uh-huh.
saying to themselves,
I will get
once
to
I have the perfect place to put this, I will
Mhm.
put it away. But until then, I'm going to put this right here. And then
Right.
I'm going to come back to it when I got a little time.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And as I say this, I am pointing to a pile on
Yeah.
on the corner of my desk,
Uh-huh.
right? And then what happens is, like, we come back from the next meeting, same thing. Then we come back from the next meeting, same thing. And then we hear somebody's going to come to our office or see our desk, and so we take that pile and then we put it under our desk, or we put it in a box, or we put it in a spare bag,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And so we got piles everywhere
Right.
because we're perfectionists. Or there's a good chance if you're a perfectionist in school and you knew the paper was due at midnight,
Mhm.
you were probably hitting send at 11:59
Mhm.
because you needed that deadline to push through the perfectionism to say, well, it's not perfect, but at least it's done, send, right?
Uh-huh. Right.
So the reason why I bring that up, there's a lot of people that I think are not figuring out their purpose
Yeah.
because they feel like it has to be perfect and they
Yeah.
have to
Already.
figure it out before they begin. But
Yeah.
what's beautiful is that God wants to meet us in the moment. Remember, like wherever our feet are, there's God with us, right? Jesus, Holy Spirit with us,
Right.
and wants to be talking with us about all of it. And the way that we figure these kinds of things is to take that next step.
Yeah.
We don't have to have the perfect plan. I mean, you look at Joshua's story again. Jo- God said, hey, your destination is this. He gave him a promised land vision,
Yeah.
but he didn't give him a huge plan. He
Right.
just gave him the plan for the next step.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
think that was a good call because I
Right.
know the Israelites, if they would have known crossing the river that
Mhm.
flint knives were the next thing, I
Yeah, they
think
would not
most
have
people would have
gone
been
for
like, hard
that.
pass, no way, right? So I do think that
Right.
God sometimes invites us to take that next step
Sure.
because he knows like we have to take the step, and that step brings us to the preparation that we need for the next step that we would not like if we knew all the steps initially, we would say hard pass because we're not ready for it. But he said, hey, keep going with me. I'll show you, I'll give you a vision, but
Yep.
I'm not going to give you the full plan. We're going to step through the plan,
Yep.
right? Because I'm going to prepare you for each step. But sometimes I'm just going to prepare you for the next step in the current step.
Yep.
So I just say to that person that may be wrestling with perfectionism and they don't even know that they are, he's not waiting for you to be perfect.
Right.
He's just waiting for you to say yes and take that next step.
I love it. That's fantastic. Where can people go who want to learn more about you?
I love it. They can start with mitchmatthews.com. We
Yeah.
spent our entire marketing budget coming up with that domain name.
Oh,
Just
yeah,
kidding.
that's
Yeah,
so
just they go to Mitch Matthews. Exactly. They go to mitchmatthews.com. And if anybody's, curious about prayer or we did put a free guide together called the 11 prayers. You can go to mitchmatthews.com/11 prayers to download it for absolute free. We designed it. We help a lot of coaches and speakers or people who want to be coaches and speakers. We designed it for them,
Yeah.
but so many people have really loved this and appreciated it, whether you're in business or leadership, or even we have teachers that love it. And
Yeah.
it's basically 11 prayers that have made a huge impact on me as a business person, as an entrepreneur, but also as a dad,
Yeah.
as a leader at our church, all those things. And it's just 11 prayers. I'm a simple guy, so they're not like wildly elaborate, and they're not in old English
Yes.
theeth and seeth and all that.
Right.
They're just really tactical, useful prayers that made a difference for me, and a lot of people appreciate it. So people go to get that again for free for mitchmatthews.com/11 prayers, and it's the numeral 11, not the word 11.
Yes.
11
And
prayers.
I will also write all that stuff out in the show notes so you can go
Thank
and
you.
click that link. And
Yep.
thank you so much, Mitch. This has been really inspiring. I appreciate it.
I love it. I just so appreciate you're such a good interviewer and you're doing it for the right reasons. So it's such an honor to get to be a part of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you.